thank you everyone for taking time and coming on a Sunday morning. When we were in the ground with like a bunch of Australian volunteers, when this Australian volunteer randomly asks me, what do women in these communities use when they menstruate? Right? And I'm like, why are you asking me this question, right? And I didn't have an answer, right? So I was quite taken aback that I actually don't know the answer, because I was coming with the perception that I know pretty much everything about these communities because I've been working in these communities for 5 years. So I was pretty embarrassed to say I don't know. So I told them that I'll come back with a presentation in the following week. And then went back home, started doing desktop research, reading articles online. That's when it came out as such a massive issue, which I had not even heard of in spite of being in the development space. So for the ones who don't know, in India there are about 300 million women even today who do not have either awareness or access to healthy menstruation. There is a significant percentage of women who are using other alternatives like sand, newspaper, plastic, ash, dust, because they don't have any alternatives, or they don't know that there is a better alternative, right? So I was quite taken aback when I read articles online. I'm like, this can't be true. And so my first response to that was me reaching out to my best friend and saying that, do you think this is true? And she's like, I don't think so. And then we were like, okay, why don't we actually like figure this out and see if this is true. So we went back to the communities and did a survey with about 250 women to understand if the situation was as bad as what we read online. And then in the survey we found about 82% of the women were not using sanitary pads, and there were about 6% of the women, which was like 3 kilometers radius from where I was born and raised, where they were using other alternatives like plastic, newspaper and ash. Right? So predominantly coming from recycling and waste picking communities, where they believe that they have to run their lives from the waste they collect. Right? So this was too hardcore for me to actually absorb and just move forward. Right? So then we pitched these findings to our then employer and said that, hey, we already have a distribution channel working with about 450 communities in Bangalore. Why don't you consider this, right? So we tried to experiment with them, and then they realized that now we want to stick to solar lights and renewable energy. But by then we were deep down into this subject. We already had spoken to 250 women, we had spoken to other organizations, that we were not in a place where we were like, okay, we'll let this be, right? So at that point of time, made a very impulsive, unwise decision of quitting my job and starting Sukhibhava. We ran a crowdfunding campaign and raised about $2,000 and started Sukhibhava. And our understanding was very simple, saying that, oh, this is a problem. We'll sell sanitary napkins at a cheaper price. Women will buy it, and the problem is solved. So that's where we actually started Sukhibhava with. So we identified a bunch of women in the communities, like in the low-income communities in Bangalore, and said that, okay, we'll give you sanitary napkins. You have to sell it within the community, and for every pack you sell, you'll get 5 rupees commission. Simple, right? So we started, and we found a manufacturer who would give us subsidized sanitary napkins, and we started distributing them. We made incredible sales for about 3 months, and we were like, whoa, this is working so fine. Like, why didn't someone else do this earlier, right? So, but after 3 months, when we went to the ground to understand how things are going, what we realized was women who are already buying sanitary napkins are the ones who are buying sanitary napkins from us. Women who are not using sanitary napkins are still not buying sanitary napkins from us. Then we were like, oh, this is not why we started Sukhibhava for. So we were like, what else do we have to do? Then we were like, oh, we have to tell them why they should be using sanitary napkins, right? So that's when we started doing mass awareness and education programs. We would bring 100 women into an auditorium, into a community center, speak for about 1.5 to 2 hours, starting from puberty to menopause to products to disposal, and then convince ourselves that, now they know, now they will start using sanitary napkins. So it took us another 3 months or 4 months to realize that these women don't even remember 5% of the content that was delivered in this session. One, because it's a lot of content. Even if I was sitting in a classroom, if someone delivered, it is starting from adolescent health to reproductive health to menopause to products to PMS to how to use them, how to dispose them. So much content, right? So they were not remembering whatever we said at all. And second is, we're talking about a subject which they don't even speak about within their own households. So as soon as we bring 100 women into an auditorium and start talking about periods, they have a mental shutdown where they don't want to listen to what we are saying, right? Then we were like, okay, what are we doing? So while all of this was happening, parallelly there was another journey that was going on, where we started with the $2,000 on the side, and we identified these micro entrepreneurs and realized that product sales is not working. By the time we realized that product sales is not working, we had exhausted the $2,000, right? And we had lost all the money with these micro entrepreneurs, products, etc., etc. And we realized that we're not doing any good work on the ground. And all we were left with is like zero bank balance and no experience in menstrual health or working with women or running an organization. There was about a 16-month journey. This was from December 2014 to about like May, June 2016, where we had no clue what we were doing, right? But all we knew was like we have to figure out something or one way or the other to make this better. So those 16 months really define Sukhibhava to a great extent of what we believe in and why should we believe in what we believe in so strongly that it really got a fundamentals really strong. Like we strongly realized that how powerful is the community around us, right? So unless we build a strong community around me, around the organization, who can support, who can believe, we will not be able to run the organization, right? So and that's been a validation year after year as we grew forward. So by the time we figured we passed this 16 months, we tried multiple things, and then finally we realized that okay, we have to do something differently, and we have to invest significant of our energy into awareness and education programs. So then we slowly evolved to a model which we are working on right now, where what we do now is we fundamentally believe one simple thing, that if we start talking about periods like a normal bodily function, a significant extent of the problem is solved, right? So what we say is that if we start talking about periods like a normal bodily function, then we will seek products, we will seek information, we will seek health, we will seek our rights, right? We are not doing any of these things because we are so stigmatized and we have so tabooed the subject that we don't want to address any of these things because we don't want to talk about it. So how do we make people talk about periods like a normal bodily function is our work all about, right? So we have two projects within Sukhibhava. One is the communities project and two is the schools project. A typical community for us is either an urban slum or a rural village. So we identify these communities and then identify women living within these communities to become our community resource persons. So these become like our grassroots leaders who endorse our work on the community. So we bring them on board, train them for 1 month to become independent menstrual hygiene facilitators. And they go to these communities and form groups of 10 to 15 women of similar age groups, like adolescent girls in one group, unmarried women in one group, sexually active women in another group, older women in one group. Where once this group is formed, we take them through a 4-point interaction spreading across 4 weeks in a given month. So it's necessarily a 1-month capsule intervention where we form the group in the first week, talk about body, getting comfortable with your own body, menstrual cycle, how many days the cycle run, period blood is pure or impure, why does white discharge happen, how are babies born, where are babies born from. So all of this biological information are given in the first session. In the second session, we largely talk about, okay, then there is a high need for you to keep yourself clean when you menstruate and otherwise. So how do you keep yourself clean? What are the different products available in the market? How do you use them? How do you dispose them? And what is PMS? How do you handle it, etc. In the third session, we focus on myths and taboos, where we say that there's so many cultural practices which we do or which we don't do when we menstruate, right? So instead of blindly following everything around what we should do and what we should not do, can we take a moment and ask ourselves why we do what we do, right? It's not about you should do or you should not do this. It's about asking yourself why you do what you do and then following it. And the fourth session is largely about conversations around periods, like how do you reach out to your mothers, how do you reach out to your fathers, how do you reach out to your family or a gynecologist about menstruation, right? So the whole idea is how can we really create spaces where women feel safe to come together with because that's the reason it's a similar age group, where they can meet again and again and again to talk about a subject they don't talk about otherwise. So how can we really create a safe space for women to actually break that silence and start engaging in a conversation? Because what we fundamentally believe is this conversation is what that does the magic around making menstruation a non-issue. So once we figured out this model in 2017, the other question what we asked ourselves was, okay, like this is the model, this is what we have to do. We have won 15 different competitions, we have raised money, we're doing fine, but we've been operating for 3 years now, but we managed to reach about 30,000 women. But there are about 300 million women in India who do not have either awareness or access to healthy menstruation. So we can't, if we continue the way we are doing, then probably even in the next 200 years, we will not be able to reach the 300 million. So what are we really doing to contribute to the larger collective movement of making menstruation an issue, right? So that's where we ideated and initiated this flagship initiative called the Period Fellowship, where we invite individuals, any individual, dynamic individual, young, old, male, female, like there are no bars, to join the fellowship program, where we select them through rigorous process. They come on board, we train them, and we place them in various different regions across India to replicate our model which we have developed from Bangalore. Right? So this year we are running the first year's fellowship program, and in June we are starting the second cohort, where this year we have 16 fellows who are working in 6 different states across India, replicating our Bangalore model with various different partner organizations. So the larger objective of the fellowship program is how can we really enable high capacity menstrual hygiene leaders who continue to work in this space after the fellowship program, so that it becomes a larger collective movement going forward, where Sukhibhava alone doesn't have to work on this, but there are more and more individuals, more and more organizations coming into picture, that it becomes like a collective action going forward, right? So just in terms of journey, one massive lesson what I've learned is the importance of people around us, and second is, without a community of people who are doing similar work, who understand the journey what I'm going through, I would not have survived 2018, because 2018 I believe was the most difficult year in my entire life, right? So because we scaled an organization from 13 people to 60 people, and until 2017 we had reached only like 45,000 people. In the last 1 year we have reached 1.6 lakh women and girls. So it has been such a massive stride that unless I had a community around me who would understand what I'm going through, what I wanted to do, I would not have survived that. And three is like me just having those mentors and advisors telling me which way to go, what to do, has really helped. So in different levels, just the idea of people and how much we invest in people and how much we really build a community of people around us in different forms has just been validated through our journey, and that's what we continue to build upon and grow forward. So another inflection point in the last 1 year was when we realized that, okay, we're working with women, building this sense of agency, building this sense of confidence to start talking about periods and seek better menstrual health practices. What we realized was, okay, we're working with women, but as soon as we finish working with women, they're going back to their own systems. That is, they're going back to their families, they're going back to their schools, where the decision maker and influencer is unfortunately someone else, right? So even for their own bodies, their own well-being, they're not the decision makers and influencers, but it's someone else. So in a family, it's still looked up as men in the family are the influencers in many ways. How can we really accelerate this process of change by working with these other influencers in the ecosystem? So what we have now started doing is working with men in family as well as boys in schools to accelerate this process of impact. There is this constant debate about why should men get involved in menstrual health, right? Like, it's a women's issue, women go through this process, men have nothing to do with it, why should men get involved, right? Gender equality is not a women's issue. Gender equality is everyone's issue. The biggest reason being that research has proven that in places, in spaces, like in workspaces, like in families, like in communities where there is gender equality, the sense of happiness quotient is much higher than otherwise. So which says that everyone's gaining from it and everyone's finding happiness in the form of gender equality, right? So how can we really look at gender equality as everyone's job and not really just as a women's job, where women have to work towards it and get better? It's something which we are trying to build with it, which is difficult, right? Even now, you can probably point at me and say that there are 3 points in this conversation where you didn't really make gender equal statements, right? And I acknowledge that I'm not there yet. I'm learning, I'm getting better at this, but I have the intention of getting better at this. So how can all of us work together in involving in each other's issue? The conversation goes on and on. So it's not just about men in menstruation, but how can we really involve everyone in everything we do is something which we are trying to work towards. So we were at a point where we wanted to address it actively, right? But now we have got to a point where we don't want to address it, but we want them to address it by themselves. So what we are trying to do is make them think about why they do what they do, and give them the necessary information and let them decide whether they want to do it or they not do want to do it, right? So how can we really still give the choice for the people to do what they want to do without we deciding for them, while we provide all the information that is required or build that sense of critical thinking for them to think about why they do what they do. That's what we specifically focus on in one of the sessions. So how can we practice informed choices as a culture is what we are trying to work towards. So we categorize our problem statements into 5 different buckets: awareness, stigma, accessibility to products, affordability of products, and disposal, right? So all the issues around menstrual health fall under these 5 brackets, but the level of each of these problems are different in different regions, right? So in urban slums, probably the sense of awareness is like still low, but accessibility to products is high. Like every community right outside the shop, they have pads displayed in the shops, right? The dynamics are different in urban slums as well as rural India. So the perceptions are very different from the communities to communities, but each of them fall into these 4 buckets. Everywhere the standard point is no one's talking about it. So even in the tribal area, where they feel it's normal, it's not dirty, let it be, even there they're not talking about it. So one constant is people are not talking about it. If there are men in the fellowship or on the ground, they are working only with men and boys. If they are women, they're working only with women and girls. But eventually we bring them together for like a mela or a fair where we break the silence on a community level. So they're working with the respective groups. If the ideology is to create a safe space, then how can we do everything for everyone to feel safe? Like if there is a man in a group of women, they don't feel comfortable or safe to talk about. At the same time, there is a woman also in a group, then men don't tell everything they have to tell, right? So with us, we've taken a complete step back from distribution of products now. So we don't distribute any products, right? So what we believe is that if we start talking about periods, then if we are seeking products, the demand for products will increase and the market will automatically address the demand for the products. So the bigger question what we asked ourselves is like, is it necessary for us to do everything from awareness to behavior change to product distribution to disposal? So we have taken an active step back from distribution of products and just saying that we want to enable conversations. But our perception towards products is we continue to educate women about all the products. That is from sanitary pads to cloth pads to menstrual cups to tampons to everyone. And talk about each of the products from pros and cons and let the women decide what they want to use. And even in the product usage trajectory, we see cloth, old cloths to sanitary pads to cloth pads to menstrual cups. That's like the trajectory. So a woman who's using old cloths finds it very easy to move to a sanitary pad. One who's using sanitary napkins then gets educated to use like a cloth pad. From cloth pad, they move to a menstrual cup. So especially for a subject like menstrual hygiene, which is just sprouting in India, where we've just started seeing people talk about, individuals started working, organizations started working. There is not enough ecosystem that has built for us to raise money from for large scale projects. Like if I want to go to a school and conduct 4 sessions, probably there is a donor who will give you like 10,000 rupees and say that go do it. But if I really want to reach like 1 million women in the next 5 years, and if I want like 10 crore rupees for that to happen, the ecosystem is not ready for that yet. So that puts us in a very difficult spot of how do we make this happen, right? So we have to actually pitch a project not as menstrual hygiene, but pitch it as women empowerment or skill development or youth development. So we have to find these separate buckets which are existing for us to raise money for menstrual hygiene, unfortunately, but it is slowly changing. So the reason why I said 2018 was the most difficult year was that because we scaled the organization so massively that we realized that the ecosystem is not ready for the scale yet, and we will not be able to sustain the same scale of work over the years, right? Because the same budget, if I've scaled last year by 10x times, then I need 10x budget going forward every year, right? So that's been one massive learning with respect to how we are looking at funding and how we want to go forward. But it's getting better, but the ecosystem is not there yet. With the fellows, we've been extremely lucky because we recruited 16 fellows and we went through like a massive stride of changes from placing, it was supposed to be an urban program, then the funder changed the strategy, so we had to put them in like rural UP, rural Jharkhand, rural Rajasthan, and they had to go through a really difficult time because we were not prepared for such work. but none of them actually quit, right? So we still have 16 fellows with us working, and out of the 16 fellows, 14 fellows want to continue working in this particular space, start their own organizations, working in the MHM space, etc. So it's been an incredible journey for them. So, but we are also trying to understand how can we do this at scale, because if with 16 fellows we were able to handhold them, build that personal equation, culture, etc., which was like the strong role that played in keeping us together. So we're also wondering how can we really like take it forward on a larger scale. They never turned out to be the barriers for what we want to do, right? So they're like, we will help you mobilize women, we will tell women in our family to come, go for your session. Like there's this pattern what we've seen with the schools, right? So we have come to a conclusion now that if there is a school we want to approach, if there is a female principal, most probably we will not work in that school because the female principal will not give permission. If there is a male permission, most probably we will work, right? So the sense of support that is coming from men is very high, but there is a sense of resistance to get involved in the conversation, right? So they're like, we'll take care of events, so you can do whatever you want to do with women in our communities, but if you expect me to come and participate in the session and talk about it, then we are not ready for it. So what we're trying to change is that now, saying that how can we really engage them in the conversation. How do they react is very interesting because there are communities which are super conservative, where they're not ready to engage in the conversation at all. Like, so one of the communities where I was in last Sunday, he's like, we're sitting within the house and we're having a conversation, and one sentence he made and he just walked out saying that Allah manzoor nahi karta, right? So he was like God doesn't allow us to have this conversation, right? So there is a lot more blockage with respect to having conversations on menstruation with men than among women. So it works differently with men and women, right? So what we have learned is with women there is a lot of they invested in their families a lot, right? So as soon as you tell them that this will help your daughter, this will help your family, women have an immediate response to saying that I want to participate. But if you tell them that it will help you, they will not come. But as soon as you say that this will help your family, there is an immediate intention of wanting to come and participate. So what we do also is on the side, this was a huge problem for us. So we have collaborated with this partner organization where they give us a kit for diabetes, blood pressure, ECG, etc., which is a portable kit which you can carry in the bag. So we tell the women that come and participate in the session. At the end of the session, you and all your family members can get a free test, right? So how can we really create an incentive for them to come in? Because you're true, right? Because they don't see the need for this. Like for example, hunger. Like everyone sees hunger as a need and everyone wants food, so they will come. But when it comes to menstrual hygiene, they're like, no, we have survived for as long as we have without this information, without these products, so we'll continue. So how do you generate that need? That will happen only after they come to the session. So even we are trying to see what are the different benefits what we can give to them to come and participate. But with men, it's far more challenging. So even with men, what we realize is telling that ECG, blood pressure, diabetes kit is not working with men. They'll be like, we go to the city, we'll get it done there. But women don't travel, right? So they actually come to the test. But with men, it's very difficult to actually mobilize. So even we are trying to understand if a group model will work with men, or we should build a one-on-one individual counseling method with men. So that's something which we are trying to understand now. Thank you. Thank you for having me.